3 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning indeed to you. It happens to all hacks eventually, I think. It's a sign of age and it's a sign of creaking bones, metaphorically speaking, as you begin to get thirsty for good news. I wish there was some good news we could talk about today. So I just caught myself then in the news bulletin thinking, shall we introduce a daily search for one good news story a day, something we can all celebrate, because Simon mentioned the fact that monkeypox seems to have plateaued. And that seems to me to be a rather beautiful distillation of the state of the nation. The best news in Britain today is that monkeypox seems to have plateaued. In other words, a number of people contracting monkeypox, one of the most innocuously named diseases in the history of diseases, monkeypox. It sounds almost like a breakfast cereal, but it's monkeypox has plateaued. It means that the number of people getting it seems to have steadied, seems to have leveled out. And then I found myself thinking, if that really is the only good news story in the country today, maybe your idea of having a new feature to identify the best good news story of the day is doomed before it has even begun. And I am currently leaning towards that conclusion. Doomed before it has even begun. Speaking of the state of the nation, I've got one of our United Nations shows coming down the pipeline. I can feel it. I don't know when we'll do it. I don't know how we'll do it. I don't know exactly what we'll do with it. But I do think that we need to just get a flavour of what life feels like elsewhere, because I don't like the idea of us being in particular peril of the situation in this country. When you look at the inflation figures published today, when you look at job vacancies, when you look at cost of living, energy prices, I would derive some comfort, odd though that may sound, from the thought that every other country or most other countries were suffering similarly. There are few more depressing words in the English language than the words you just heard in the news bulletin there. Cabinet Minister Kit Malthouse. Good grief. Has it really come to this? But don't forget, just around the corner now, you're going to be hearing the words Prime Minister Liz Truss. So I'd take a win if you offered it to me on Cabinet Minister Kit Malthouse. Unbelievable. But I'm trying again this morning to blame everything on the war in Ukraine and sundry other issues without ever mentioning the Brexit that they have inflicted upon this undeserving nation for reasons that they are too stupid ever to understand or explain. Quite incredible to reflect upon that. So, 6 minutes after 10 is the time. We'll begin with Liz Truss, and we'll begin with Mark, actually, who's already texted in to say, this kind of nonsense from Truss plays really well with my family. I've missed a word out from that sentence. Can you guess what that word is? Hi, James. That kind of nonsense from Truss plays really well with my family. No, not that word. Don't be ridiculous. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. We're not effing and jeffing yet, even on texts. They feel isolated from the comment because they're Tories and will agree that everyone else is lazy. So she's not talking about them personally. Yes, you're right. The missing word from the first sentence was Tory. And I did, oddly, see in that text a fairly accurate reflection of my own thoughts on this. Just before I opened my gob towards the end of Nick's show, I had a little echo of the post-Brexit refrain that we heard so often on the programme from people whose own family had essentially voted to chuck them out of the country. I didn't mean you. And it is such a weapon for the right wing, probably for the left wing as well, but they haven't been in power for 12 years and my memory's not what it used to be. Oh, I didn't mean you. Oh, we've got to get rid of those immigrants. Oh, I'm your doctor. I'm an immigrant. Oh, I didn't mean you. We've got to get rid of those immigrants. We've got to get rid of those Polish people or those Romanians. Oh, hello, I'm your builder. I'm your gynecologist. I'm your accountant and I happen to be Polish. Oh, I didn't mean you. Got to get rid of those Romanians. Oh, hello, I'm your daughter's best friend's mum from primary school. I'm Romanian. Oh, I didn't mean you. We've got to get rid of those foreigners. Got to get rid of those Germans. Oh, hello, I'm your son-in-law. Oh, I didn't mean you. Heard it all the time on the programme. There's something in that needs further development, needs further exploration, I think. That idea of othering even when they're not others. It's so successful. I guess it reaches its apotheosis in that despicable poster that Farage unveiled shortly before a white supremacist terrorist murdered Joe Cox. That idea of turning other humans into a threat, even though you know nothing about them and you don't know them at all, turning them into a negative, painting other people in abusive, insulting terms, secure in the knowledge that none of the people that you're performing for are going to get close enough to them to find out that you're lying. Because here's the thing about Liz Truss. We are not idle. We are not an idle nation. We have low productivity for a variety of reasons, which we will hope to explore today. But chiefly, I believe, because British companies have been freed up since the 1980s to extract as much short-term profit from their coffers as possible, whereas productivity is improved by investment in infrastructure, workforce, and practices, equipment, everything. I mean, it's a simplistic analysis, but it's got to be part of the problem, hasn't it? You look at why other countries have higher profits for shareholders, but higher productivity from workers. It's about speculating to accumulate. Invest today, make more money tomorrow. But if you're just desperate to rip out as much money as you can today, which again is at the ideological heart of this particular brand of conservatism, it has been since 1979, deregulation is exactly what I'm describing. Get more money out. More money, and they claim it's an incentive for investment, but it's not really. It's an incentive for asset stripping. And then they wonder why productivity is low, because British workforces are using old equipment or old premises. Did you see the story about the hospital roofs yesterday? 34, I think, hospital roofs are in danger of imminently falling in. And that sits very neatly alongside the, I don't know if you can call this news, because it was so bleeding obvious from day one, that Boris Johnson's promised 40 hospitals are about as likely to happen as Kidderminster Harriers winning the FA Cup this season. Never say never, Keith. Never say never. So 10 minutes after 10 is the time. Have a listen to this. Reflect upon the fact that if you've been lucky enough to listen to this programme over the last few years, you will be the least surprised people in the country, because I have been telling you for the best part of a decade what these people are made of, and with particular reference to Liz Truss and their ludicrous book written in conjunction with Kwasi Kwarteng, Priti Patel, Chris Skidmore, and another one. Who's the other one? Who's it? Truss, Skidmore, Kwarteng, Raab, of course, Dominic Raab. That's Keith's first ever political contribution to the programme. He's only been here 2.5 years. Well played, Keith. Lovely work. 11 minutes after 10 is the time. You will be among the least surprised people in the country, because I've been telling you for the best part of a decade what these people are made of. And crucially, I've been telling you what they think of you. And this is the bit I don't get. And this is why Mark's text is so pertinent. And this is why I couldn't help thinking of the, oh, I didn't mean you line used after Brexit by people who'd voted to diminish the existence of their own friends and family. I didn't mean you. Who does she mean? 0345 6060973. And where would someone like Liz Truss, whose working career before politics, as far as I can tell, involved being an accountant at the super profitable multinationals Shell and Cable and Wireless, where does this idea come from? How does this get seeded in the mind of someone like Liz Truss? Is she in hock to the secretly funded think tanks, so-called think tanks, that are popping up all over the place to represent the interests of their anonymous donors without ever admitting either that they are popping up all over the place solely to represent the interests of their anonymous donors, or indeed disclosing the identity of their donors? But they'll be along in a minute with a Daily Telegraph column and a little slot on the BBC News. Is that all it is? I mean, has the Conservative Party been successfully infiltrated by the ghouls and vampires of Tufton Street? I don't know, but where does she get that idea from? Anyway, have a little listen to what Liz Truss thinks about you and your daughter and your dad.
Basically, British workers, I once wrote a book about this which got mischaracterised, but British workers produce less per hour and that's a combination of kind of skill and application. Essentially, it's partly a sort of mindset and attitude thing, I think. Yeah, it's working culture, basically. If you go to China, it's quite different, I can assure you. There's a fundamental issue in British working culture, and essentially, if we're going to be a richer country and a more prosperous country, that needs to change, but I don't think people are that keen to change that. There's a slight thing in Britain about wanting the easy answers. In the referendum, it's like, we say it's all Europe that's causing us all these problems, or it's migrants that are causing these problems, and actually what needs to happen is, a bit more more graft. And it's not a popular message.
But that's astonishing on so many levels. It's astonishing because she's been hiding in plain sight since she published that ridiculous book. It's astonishing because she actually dismantles the whole motivation behind Brexit, for example, the utterly bogus and dishonest demonisation of migrants. It shows that she knows, which is terrifying. I would rather have a vampire in charge that doesn't realise they're a vampire than a vampire who knows they're a vampire but is pretending not to be. That line there about the migrants in many ways could get us another hour of radio. We do an hour on the comments about graft and hard work and an hour on the tacit admission there that the entire Conservative government is currently built upon lies about migration and migrants. Inevitably, the front page of the Daily Telegraph today returns to that territory. What would you do? What would you do if you were in charge of this country and you were absolutely terrified of your party faithful just finally waking up one morning and realising that you're in charge of this country? Modern slavery law is biggest loophole for migrants. To be honest with you, that pathetic headline from the Daily Telegraph today, that pathetic front page, yeah, well, it looks like the Watergate-era Washington Post when you compare it to the Daily Mail. Thinking of today, the cost of living, the inflation, the energy prices, there's a massive crisis looming in the NHS. The ambulance service is about to buckle. What does the Daily Mail splash with? Some absolute hogwash from Grant Shapps about the possibility of putting number plates on bicycles. There are mornings, aren't there, where we feel like a failed state. It's incredible. But thank goodness Liz Truss is going to be Prime Minister because she really holds the British people in high regard. Oh. What? I think some mornings we can just chat, can't we? So I would say this as question number one. What do you think of that? And what has that done to you? Hearing that after the shift you put in last week, what has that done to you? 0345 6060 973. And include the comments about Europe and migrants as well. The admission from Liz Truss, the ice queen of Brexit, vying to become Boris Johnson Mark II. The admission in private, when she didn't realise the comments would be made public, that blaming bad stuff on Europe and on migrants is dishonest, bogus and daft. That's incredible, right? I've done that thing again where I've changed tack on a topic halfway through my introduction, dragged myself back to the first point of interest. Who's she talking about? 0345 6060 973. How do you feel knowing that your next Prime Minister thinks that you lack the work ethic? How does that make you feel? And if you are like Mark's Tory family, any chance of a quick call? Just the idea that, yes, she's absolutely right. It doesn't mean me. It means those people over there, peasants, lazy peasants. Or, of course, there's a slim possibility that she's just thinking about that time Jacob Rees-Mogg had a kip on the front bench of the House of Commons. I mean, if that was your experience of working culture, you could be forgiven for thinking that the population lacked a work ethic. Anyone else had a snooze at work? With such contempt for the British public that you didn't even care there were cameras present? I don't know. OK, here we go. 0345 6060 973. A nice entry-level question for you first. What are those comments? The bit about China, particularly galling, I felt. Oh, we need to be more like communist China, where workers are like drones with few rights and no dignity and no respect. Yes, we need to be more like that, says the next Prime Minister. 0345 6060 973. And where does she get this idea from? I'd love you to have a crack at that. What does productivity mean? And why is it so low in this country? Because I'll tell you something for nothing. It is not because you are lazy. 19 minutes after 10. And well, let's start in Scotland. Liz Truss was there yesterday, promising to provide more scrutiny of the Scottish government, which is not remotely arrogant, patronising or breathtaking at all. Brian's in Aberdeen. Brian, what would you like to say?
I love it when politicians speak about productivity when they clearly rarely have any real idea what it means. I mean, Liz Truss's comments really, I think, demonstrate just how ignorant and just stupid and wrong she is on this issue.
Isn't it more subtle than that? Listen, I can't criticise other people for using words like ignorant and stupid. I've allowed them to be introduced to my political vocabulary in the last couple of years for reasons that are blindingly obvious. But it can't just be that she's being stupid. There must be something subtler going on. Something has led her to this place. When she sat down with Dominic Raab and Kwasi Kwarteng and the rest of them to actually write a book, and they all agreed to contain the line among the idlest in the world, it's come from somewhere. They haven't all miraculously and coincidentally arrived at the conclusion that British workers are lazy. They believe it, even though they don't really know any.
Because they are stupid and ignorant.
I just gave you the easiest way to step back from that position, and you just went in with both feet, studs up. Carry on.
Well, I'll explain, because, there's productivity. Okay, I mean, if you want to increase productivity, then there are two things you can do. The two things that make the biggest difference.
Yes.
One is investment.
Yes.
And two is elimination of waste. And this is something I've worked in for some years. So I will modestly suggest I'm.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It'll never catch on.
Yeah. Well, not in the Tory party anyway. But if you take a very simple example, if you've got two farmers. One of them chooses to invest in a tractor. The other chooses to continue ploughing his field with a horse-drawn plough. Mm. Well, it doesn't matter how many tea breaks either farmer takes. The guy with the tractor is always going to have a more productive farm. And you can apply
the guy with the plough has given the money that he would have spent on the tractor to his investors, you see.
Exactly, yeah.
Basically, I took your analogy and I gave it a bit of a polish there, Brian, you see? That's quite nice.
I like that.
Yeah,
well done, James.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
But you can apply the same thinking. You can scale that up. Let's say you've got products that you want to get from, like, Birmingham to Central Europe. Well, you can, an easy way to do that would be to load your products onto a high-capacity, high-speed train line that links directly all the way through the European network. Mm. Or you can continue to rely on B roads and rail infrastructure that was built in the Victorian era.
And why not erect some absolutely unnecessary new trade barriers while you're at it as well?
Yeah, that's also true. You put up trade barriers, and Brexit is a form of putting up
Let's
trade
abolish
barriers.
frictionless trade. Let's abolish frictionless trade with the largest market in the world. That'd be cool. That'd be good for productivity.
Yeah. So all of those things, I mean, it's government investment as well as private business investment. Government need to invest in the infrastructure, which they've conspicuously not done, and actually reduced it.
And if she's going to cut taxes, she is going to have to cut spending as well, of course. So that is less investment in infrastructure.
Exactly. So you take all of that investment away. Well, British workers could, if they wanted, choose to take loads and loads of tea breaks. Mm. But that's really inconsequential.
It's not going to make the blindest bit of difference because they've still got a horse-drawn plough. Brian, I'm going to withdraw my invitation to you to step back from the words ignorant and stupid because I issued it without listening to your full analysis. And now that I have listened to your full analysis, yeah, that works. It is just ignorant and stupid, although ignorant is a more nuanced word than some people allow. And I'm interested in the roots of the ignorance, and I might even pompously reach for the phrase, the ideological roots of this ignorance. How does somebody like Liz Truss and Dominic Raab and Kwasi Kwarteng and Priti Patel and Chris Skidmore, how do they end up at the conclusion that British workers are lazy when they don't know any British workers? That's a genuine question that I invite you to answer. Michael's in. Thank you, Brian. Take care. Michael's in Ludlow. Michael, what would you like to say? Lovely part of the world.
Good morning, Brian.
Hello, Brian.
Sorry. Yes. I'm a welder, work in a factory.
Whereabouts? In the Black Country?
In Ludlow.
In Ludlow?
Yes.
Gosh.
Yes, this is. It used to be a small family-run firm. It's been bought out by Americans.
Okay.
A few years ago, we make agricultural machinery. I'm a welder fabricator. Yeah. I qualified as a welder 31 years ago. was considered a skilled trade then. I was earning as much as my friends who trained as electricians, plumbers, stuff like that. So I was on what I considered a good wage when I started welding in 1991. When I took this job 2.5 years ago, I said to the manager who interviewed me, when he explained...
I'm sorry, Mike, I'm going to have to hurry you up a bit. I don't know if you're doing something else while you're talking to me, like making a sandwich or a bit of light welding, but I'm just going to nudge you towards the point you rang in to make.
Okay. No,
Please.
sorry, I work nights.
Yeah, that's all right.
Everybody in the factory, including myself, have actually turned around and gone, we don't care about producing any parts.
Right.
Our pay rise was 5.4 or 5.6% this year.
And what sort of profits are the company making?
Sorry?
What sort of profits?
They're making millions.
Yeah, there it is.
Our manager, operations director in our company, gave himself a 28% rise.
And the foot soldiers are getting scraps from the table.
Yeah,
and that...
I am basically getting the same hourly rate as I got when I was first qualified as a skilled worker.
And that will be a common experience. Can I ask you a slightly unexpected question?
Yes.
What do you think about the railway strikes?
I think they're great. The problem with our company is the people are so disillusioned and so poorly paid. We have got such poor union membership now, and I've been a union member all my life.
The unions have been castrated, haven't they?
Yeah, basically, we have got absolutely no say.
This is why she wants. This is why she wants to be more like China. You see, more like China. If you don't tug your forelock, off your cap, say thank you for the pittance that you're paid, and then work yourself into an early grave, then it'll be the Labour camps for you, my friend.
Oh, absolutely.
That's incredible that she said that bit out loud. We need to be more like China. I think that goes back to Brian, ignorant and stupid. Mate, get some kip.
Yeah, 10-hour shift coming up.
All right, you look after yourself. No, I'm going to crack on. I'm going to get some other calls on. 27 minutes after 10 is the time. James is in Tilbury. James, what would you like to say?
Very good morning. I represent British seafarers, and listening to your show this morning, one thing I'd like to say to Liz Truss.
Yes.
We work endless hours, nights. We spend a long time away from our families in order to keep the supply lines open, bringing in all sorts of goods from China, Europe, America. It's a very difficult job. We can be working up to 20 hours a day. And she needs to realise that there's hard-working people within the shipping industry, working all hours under the sun to keep the trade lines trade open for Britain. And her comments today were disgusting.
I'm glad you used that word, because I completely agree with you, but it has much more power coming from you. Can I ask what you are or where you were politically over the last decade, or would that be too rude of me?
I've been in the shipping industry for the last 20 years, working all sorts of coastal routes, bringing in containers.
I said politically, not professionally. Where does your politics traditionally lie, James?
My politics lie not with the Tories. Okay. It used to lie with the Tories.
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
But not anymore.
I didn't know this. I mean, whether it was true or not, as I was growing up, and I don't know how old you are, but when I was growing up, they liked to cast themselves as the party of the work, of hard work, the parties of aspiration, the party of business. Yes. And now you've got one Prime Minister on the way out who famously said F business when he was trying to push Brexit through, and another one on the way in who thinks we're all as lazy as Jacob Rees-Mogg, which is incredibly insulting.
It is, and one point I'd like to make is in the seafaring industry and in the shipping industry, we have relied on having open trade and open borders and free movement of people, and we are seeing huge effects.
Oh no, you're not. Oh no, you're not. Nothing to do with Brexit. It's all because of it's all because of the. Don't blame it on the Brexit. Blame it on the boogie. Didn't you get the memo? It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's all to do with the boogie.
I gratefully disagree with that.
Take care, James. Thank you for everything that you do. Don't blame it on the sunshine. Don't blame it on the moonlight. Don't blame it on the Brexit. Blame it on the boogie. It's 10:30. Dominic Ellis has your headlines. It's the politics of it as well. You remember when Gordon Brown was recorded calling that woman a bigot, which was technically, I suppose, defensible, but was politically and optically absolutely awful. She was one of those people who'd been persuaded that her problems or her community's problems were caused by migrants, which, as Liz Truss concedes in this recording, is not true. That's the most amazing bit. You need to back up a bit, don't you? She's actually saying it's just not true. We blame all our problems on Europe and migrants, but it's not true. That was in 2019 as well, long after she'd undertaken her U-turn on Brexit. But in private, she's still perfectly capable of denigrating the two biggest platforms upon which Brexit was built. The lies, the bogus representations of immigration in general and the European Union in particular. So the politics of it intrigues me. This question of Andrew Mitchell's career was over, wasn't it, when he called a police officer a pleb? Allegedly. Is it allegedly or not? I think it was, either way. That was it. He was out of the cabinet. A different era, I grant you. David Cameron was Prime Minister. I saw them once at a party, and Andrew Mitchell called David Cameron Prime Minister even though he wasn't Prime Minister anymore. I asked a couple of political hacks present whether or not that was normal behaviour. Apparently not. Just a little bit of an anecdote for you there. You can take the boy out of the gossip columns. So, calling a police officer a pleb, career curtains, or cabinet curtains, if you like. Just normal ones, not Lulu Little ones, which are currently festering in the back of a removal van. And Gordon Brown, electoral disaster, when he was recorded calling a woman a bigot. Liz Truss is recorded calling pretty much everybody in Britain lazy. Why doesn't it land anymore? Why doesn't it matter? 0345 606 0973. And I think the grown-ups need to know what productivity is, or rather the rest of us need the grown-ups to tell us what productivity really is. Brian in Aberdeen, very strong on explaining the ignorance behind her comments. I'm prepared to give her a bit more benefit of the doubt at this point. Is there any mileage in the idea that Britain's historically low productivity is linked to the work ethic of British workers? Because maybe I'm being a bit naive and patriotic in springing to the defence of the workforce when the woman who is about to become Prime Minister is quite happy in private to attack it. 0345 606 0973. And I'm going to do this possibly later in the programme with regard to Rwanda, but I do keep coming back to Mark's text. That kind of nonsense from Truss plays really well with my Tory family. Have you got relatives who like this? I'm working on the principle that if you like this, the days of you thinking you could ring in and land a punch are over. And that's a shame. I really miss you. But, you can set up an anonymous Twitter account with a bulldog avatar and tweet about how stupid I am and how we vet callers and we'll never let anyone as clever as you on the programme. Because it's a shame you don't ring in anymore. But maybe your wife will ring in or your children will ring in and tell us what you're like and tell us the arguments you make in company with them that you've somehow no longer got the courage to try to make on the radio. 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need. Charlie's in Lewis. Charlie, what do you think?
What do I think? Gosh, where to start, James? I think I'm a first-time caller for number one, so
well
I'll
done.
see how this goes. Thank you. So when she talks about lazy workers and others do, I think this is a case of ideology over observable reality.
Yes.
I think is what's going on. And I think it kind of matches quite well with your 1984 quote you like to get quite often. So they seem to have a sense of how things work or how economics work. And I don't know if they studied the E of PPE when they were at Oxbridge, but there seems to be a sense of they just resort to these stereotypes because it fits in with an ideology. So thinking particularly about productivity, to try and follow up that last excellent call, when I think about observable reality, what most affects productivity is literally, for number one, how much time does a worker get to spend at work? So what I mean by that is if you have to spend days off sick because you can't get a hospital appointment, or it takes ages to get to local between appointments because road and rail infrastructure is buggered, or you can't get promotion because the education system let you down, or you take time off to look after your parents. All of these things point to observable reality that if you could spend more time at work, what would boost that would be state expenditure on the health service, on transport, on education, on social care. People would be able to spend so much more time at work and know they were cared and looked after, that would clearly be the biggest single boost to productivity.
It seems as obvious as the nose on your face, that to me, and to most people listening. I
don't know if that's taught in the E of PPE, because I wasn't smart enough to study that. I just did marketing.
I think there's a lack of humanity in the analysis as well, isn't there? I mean, I don't know whether it's a bit lazy or unfair to suggest that this speaks to me of someone who doesn't like people. She feels that people are either an inconvenience or she thinks they're lazy and stupid, but that's okay because they'll vote for her. There's no recognition of what you describe, and the comparison with China should be chilling. The idea that we can increase productivity by becoming a totalitarian state.
Which is, it's not a very attractive idea, to be honest with you.
Not to me.
Although we seem to be heading there. But I think you're right. It's almost like maybe one of the downsides, I don't want to misjudge everybody, the Oxbridge education, the route that she's gone, is you're not sufficiently exposed to, let's not say real people, but enough people who are experiencing how life really is. So
but the real people vote for her. This is the great mystery for me of modern politics. Well, it's a history of life, is that people are voting for her, even as she calls them lazy, because they think that she's not talking about them.
I think you're right, but clearly when it's like amplified by a very supportive client journalist, as you say, it's a very hard thing to kind of counter. But when it's so easy, though, if you can take one step back and look at each of the things that both candidates are saying.
Yes.
I just want to add one other thing, if I could.
Briefly, quickly.
I may not ever call you again, haven't I?
I hope you
talks about she talks about boosting growth, but again, the reality is that since the Second World War, growth has grown in a rough...
Just watch your language a little bit, Charlie, please.
I'm so sorry.
That's right, we dumped it anyway, so back up a little bit. What annoys people?
Okay. So I think what annoys people, possibly the most, possibly unconsciously, is that that it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're not going to share in growth.
Well, that takes us back to our friend in Ludlow with a 4 or 5% pay rise when management are getting 28%. I even write that down to get the numbers right. Charlie, thank you. Next time, watch the potty mouth. I look forward to your second appearance on the programme. 10:40 is the time. 20 to 11 in old money. 0345 6060. 973 is the number you need. And again, I'm extending an olive branch here because I think that they must think more, that they must have more to go on than what we think they've got to go on. Do you see what I mean? So Brian and now Charlie both offering up analyses of productivity that seem to me to be irresistible. So how can people with good educations, don't know that education is necessarily a mark of intelligence, but with good educations end up believing that British workers are lazy and that productivity is a result of idleness? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. That's the bit that is intriguing to me. And if it was a throwaway comment from one politician, then maybe it wouldn't feel so significant. But it's not. It's part of her marrow. It's part of her political marrow. So much so that she wrote that infernal book, 150 odd pages, 5 authors, 150. That sounds pretty idle to me. Even I managed to get a couple of books out on my own. 5 authors. But then they wrote those immortal words about British workers being among the idlest in the world. It runs through her, this belief, like Blackpool through a stick of rock, and I want to know where it comes from. 0345 6060 973. Should we do Idiot's Corner on the text? Idiot's Corner on the text? Does James not consider the infected blood payments to be a good news story, or could it be he's friends with the idiot that is Ken Clarke? Yeah, okay, you carry on, mate. Stay away from scissors. Rob's in Maidstone. Rob, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, I have one of those families who will be voting for Liz Truss and think she walks on water. Now,
my commiserations, Rob.
Yes, but I've phoned a couple of times over the last year about mental health and the financial crisis and all those things, because that's what my lived experience was.
I remember.
I've been in and out of hospital 4 or 5 times. My sister put into a letter to a member of my family that Rob is lazy, indolent, and must get off his arse, because the only way to get better is to be working. Now, she is not a bad person, but those views have come straight from her political stuff, because she believes in what she's been told by all of her Tory friends. And it's quite sad.
Well, there's a lot going on there, Rob. First of all, I feel for you. That's a horrible situation to be put in. Second of all, I've thought about this a lot recently, the sort of philosophy of it. It's almost as if people who are relatively fortunate have to believe that people who are unfortunate through their own fault, because that allows them to cling on to the idea that A, it's not luck that has delivered their lives, and B, they're not living lucky lives that could be taken away at any minute. There's a form of self-protection in that outlook, I think, sometimes.
And there is a psychological theory that deals exactly with that, about how we acquire more. We begin to think that we have done more to deserve it.
Yes.
As opposed to, we knew the right person who told us about a job, or our company did better because it had something
parents sent you to a certain school, or you had other advantages and privileges and all of that. And wow, what would your sister's reasoning be, do you think? Where would she fit in on that model, if that's not an intrusive question?
She will tell you that because she went back to school when she got divorced, and then became an accountant, and then made money and bought a house, and then met another. She would say because of that, it was her hard work that got her out of the situation, and would not acknowledge that she had support from family. Because once she'd achieved it, it was because of what she had done.
Yes.
Not because of a situation.
Or the world turning. I get that, and a lot of people will be in similar situations, although possibly not with the contrast quite as stark as it is with you. And how does she derive... it's easier to answer the next bit, actually. I was about to say, how does she go along with what Truss has said? And the answer is because she's supremely confident that Liz Truss isn't talking about her, she's talking about you.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
But don't worry, I wanted some good news, though, James.
Yes?
Since we've been talking, finished treatment, back in the job market,
well done, mate.
and doing much better.
Great stuff. I'm glad to hear it, Rob.
Hope for all those people out there.
Yes,
all right, mate?
No, there is, and you take care. Keep in touch. I look forward to when you won't be able to ring me because you'll be too busy in your new livelihood. A little bit more good news, if it counts as such, from Andrew Sentence, the former member of the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England. House price inflation is actually down. That's down to 7.8%. So it's still about 4 times the 2% target, but that means that in one key area, inflation is coming down, even as it is driven upwards by the cost of food and fuel and other commodities. 0345 6060 973. Commodities. I play this game called Spelling Bee that the New York Times does every day. Pay a couple of quid a month to do it. It comes off the back of Wordle. And sometimes on the radio I say a word and I realise that it was one of the answers on Spelling Bee a couple of days ago that I missed. Bloody commodity. It's 10:45. 10:48 is the time. How can Liz Truss go out into the world selling Britain now? Asks Steve. Who's going to invest in this lazy workforce that she describes? It's an extremely good point. And British workers do an estimated £30 billion worth of unpaid work per year. Productivity is not what Liz Truss thinks it is, which is fairly remarkable. I'm going to pick over the bones of that clip again in a minute and also remind you of... another journalist who brought, because I tend not to get very close to these people these days, but another journalist who brought that book to her attention, and she threw Dominic Raab under a bus, which is looking increasingly dishonest and disingenuous now that we've heard evidence of her essentially echoing exactly the same thoughts in a private meeting. Gordon's in Weldon. Gordon, what would you like to say?
Well, I was pondering what's been said,
yes.
And I think we are lazier than people in China, but absolutely rightly so.
Well, I don't know that lazier is the right word, but I know what you mean. We possibly we're not working at the end of a whip.
Exactly that. Having spent a lot of my 20s and 30s in Asia,
yes,
you've got millions of people starving. You've got people that can barely feed themselves. So it's understandable they're going to work round the clock, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone in the UK if we can avoid it at all.
I'm sure when I say that, don't I? And then there's a tiny little voice in the back of my head going, really? Really, James? Really? I'm sure that they don't want to return to a form of serfdom or feudalism where essentially you have to work until you drop, otherwise you won't be able to eat that night. But it's a very odd position for a British politician to take in the 21st century, isn't it?
It's Darwinian in Asia. The way that people have to work round the clock to feed themselves and look after themselves. It's even worse when you go to the rural areas. The extreme poverty is unreal.
Do you think she hates?
Suggest we want to head in that direction is bonkers.
Well, you know that, and I know that. some people like the sound of it. Rob's sister probably likes the sound of it because that's the only way that these lazy bums are going to get off their backsides and actually do a proper shift. Is there a degree of contempt here? Do you think she hates people?
I just don't think she's joined the dots.
No.
There's, you go to somewhere like China. If you go to a hospital, you have to pay before you're treated, albeit not very much, but they won't touch you.
No, they'd love that. I think this lot.
There's very little benefits if you're not working. There's no support network. So a lot of the things that we enjoy in the UK that then ultimately drive productivity, but probably make the government spend more money, don't exist. And you would think, actually, a communist country where there's something for everyone would actually have a better support network and structure, but the reality is the opposite. Of course, in many ways.
Human nature intervenes in the modelling, doesn't it? Every time. Briefly, politically, how old are you, Gordon? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 46.
46. So similar vintage to me. I'm just 4 years older than you. Am I going a bit nuts, or would this have really blown up a candidacy a few years ago? This sort of comment coming to the fore.
I think it would got people in a lot of trouble. A lot more than it has Liz.
I wonder whether...
I'm old enough to remember when Gordon Brown got in hot water for calling someone a bigot.
Yes.
Yeah. This is probably worse because you're calling everyone.
Because she's insulting us, not just one woman in one media round. All of us. 10:52 is the time. Thank you, Gordon. Anthony's in Bletchley Park. Anthony, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good morning.
Hello.
I've got a question which sort of kind of reverses the Liz Truss situation, which is now she's been caught saying this. How is they going to unsay it?
Saying now what? Saying the thing that she said?
Yeah. I mean,
let's just remind people, because people might just be tuning in. Do you want to be my co-presenter today? Should we do this together?
Love to.
Carry on. So here is what Anthony is referring to.
Liz Truss, on your idea of changing the economic orthodoxy, you have talked about this.
That's me. Anthony, it's your first shift and you've blown it.
Oh, sorry. I resigned immediately. I'm lazy.
That's not the one that I wanted. That's the other one. I'll come back to that in a minute. You carry on. That was my bad, by the way. It wasn't yours or anybody else's. It was me being too clever for my own good again. Carry on, Anthony.
Thank you very much. Well, now she's called us apparently lazy. Her spin doctors are also going to hope we're lazy idiots. And we're going to drink from the fountain of that toxic right-wing Kool-Aid that the papers are going to spew out.
Why? I mean, this is fascinating to me. I touched on it with the last caller. Why does this not feel huge in a way that I'm pretty sure it would have done at previous points in British politics?
OK, well, Gordon Brown was caught on tape as a different situation. He was a socialist, an exceptionally clever man with morals and standards, all of which are anathema to the Daily Mail. Yes. Liz Truss is a sail flapping in the wind. She gets filled with hot air from the prevailing winds of political trope. She tacks around without course to sail, content that at the end of the day she's sinking less quickly than the HMS Rishi Sunak. Unfortunately for UK PLC, we're sailing on the bloody Titanic.
I need a slightly less well-rehearsed line on why, because politicians have been... Andrew Mitchell was a Conservative MP and the Daily Mail liked him. He called a police officer a pleb. The wheels fell off his cabinet career. What's happened to politics or to the country to create an air that Liz Truss is just going to waltz away from this?
Because the rise of social media, the impact of social media, and the ability of social media and online media to manipulate people's thoughts and to persuade them.
You're more pessimistic than I am, you know. I know you are, and that's quite an achievement. I'm quite big on the manipulation of people and the grooming and the gaslighting of the nation, and few people are more caustic in their evidence-based criticism of the absurd Daily Mail than me. But I disagree. I think something odd is happening temporarily rather than permanently, and I think people will go back to being outraged by political candidates who call them lazy. But I guess I'm going down my own rabbit hole now. I think that until the lies of Brexit have been completely highlighted and admitted, then you're never going to have honesty or truth mattering in British politics anymore. It's not Boris Johnson. You get rid of Boris Johnson, you just get rid of one liar, arguably the best liar of them all. You don't get rid of an environment in which lies are allowed to flourish and are professionally advantageous. Right, I'm going to try it now. I'm going to try my forensic analysis of Liz Truss and recent pronouncements. So we'll begin with the full clip of what she said yesterday.
Basically, British workers. I once wrote a book about this, which got mischaracterised. But British workers produce less per hour and that's a combination of kind of skill and application. Essentially, it's partly a sort of mindset and attitude thing, I think. Yeah, it's working culture, basically. If you go to China, it's quite different, I can assure you. There's a fundamental issue of British working culture, and essentially, if we're going to be a richer country and a more prosperous country, that needs to change, but I don't think people are that keen to change that. There's a slight thing in Britain about wanting the easy answers. In the referendum, it's like, we say it's all Europe that's causing us all these problems, it's migrants that are causing these problems, and actually what needs to happen is, a bit more graft. And it's not a popular message.
So that was leaked yesterday. It comes from 2019, 3 years after the referendum. That is Liz Truss saying it is on the record, I suppose, not that she knew it was going to be on the record when she said it, that the use of Europe and migration during the referendum were completely dishonest tactics, were false answers to the question of how do we improve the country. That should be incredible, right? Regardless of whether you're 52, 48, even if you've got a scarf tied so tightly around your neck that it's cut off the flow of blood to your head, that should be incredible. There's a woman who is campaigning to become the second Brexit Prime Minister, so I don't think Theresa May fits into that category, even though Truss voted Remain. She's become more Brexity than Rishi Sunak, who voted Leave. There she is admitting that the whole flipping hill of beans was built upon lies about Europe and migration. I don't know how that makes you feel as someone who voted for it because of Europe and migration. But she thinks you're really, really stupid. I guess in your case she's right. But she thinks you're really, really lazy as well, which I don't believe you are. So that's what she thinks. Okay, that's what she thinks. In fact, listen to that bit again. Crucially, the bit at the end is quite important.
There's a slight thing in Britain about wanting the easy answers. In the referendum, it's like, we say it's all Europe that's causing us all these problems, it's migrants that are causing these problems, and actually what needs to happen is, a bit more graft. And it's not a popular.
That's incredible. Europe and migrants. Wow. Okay. During one of these interminable hustings or debates, Chris Mason of the BBC put to her the line that I've been hitting you over the head with for the best part of a decade. And I want you to listen to this. It's incredible. I want you to notice two things. I want you to notice how easily she lies, how easily she tries to disown the opinion that we know she holds, because I've just played you a recording of her articulating it. And I also want you to notice what's happened to her voice in the last 3 years.
Liz Truss, on your idea of changing the economic orthodoxy, you have talked about this for many years. In fact, you co-wrote a book the best part of 10 years ago that set out some of these arguments. In that book, though, you and your fellow authors talked about, well, our audience here in the room tonight and at home watching and listening as amongst the worst idlers in the world. We work among the lowest hours, we retire early, our productivity is poor. Is that what you're saying to the people who you aspire to vote for?
That's not what I'm saying. And I use
the book you wrote.
Every author wrote a different chapter, and I wrote the chapter on education. That particular chapter was written by Dominic Raab, who's actually supporting Rishi's campaign. But just to be absolutely clear.
So she's lying about her own beliefs. She's throwing a colleague dishonestly under a bus, and she is inflicting further division upon the party that she seeks to lead. And remember, whichever politician you look at, whichever leader you look at how they handle the party and you'll get an idea of how they would handle a country. Whether you're talking about Jeremy Corbyn or Boris Johnson, look at how they handle a party. If they can run a party, they can run a country. If they can't run a party, they can't. Look, that's how she will treat the country. And listen now to this a little bit later in the same debate. So you remember what she said about how Europe was used as a false alarm, really, to explain problems in the country. Now listen to Liz Truss, the same Liz Truss, although I grant you nothing like the same voice, the same Liz Truss 3 years later. The Liz Truss there recorded in 2019 admitting that Europe is used as a false sort of promise, a false deliverer, if you like, of reasons why the country is not in a better state. And now listen to her just a couple of weeks ago.
What Britannia Unchained was about, it was about a belief that Britain could have a better future, and that we didn't just need to simply accept the orthodoxy, the way things have always been done, the bean counting of saying, we have to just except that nothing will ever change. I believe we can do things differently. I want to change our regulations. I want to get those EU regulations off the statute book.
The front of the woman. So privately, she knows that talking gibberish about Europe is a very good way of offering up false hope that the country can be improved. Privately, she's on tape saying it. Publicly, she's still doing it. It's 11 o'clock. It's 4 minutes after 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we change tack now completely. I'm not going to labour the point or bore you with it daily, but I am conscious of talking together about things that are not going to add to the growing sense of doom and gloom around the country. You can't really talk about the proper news without having a bit of a shiver, whether it is energy bills or inflation or cost of living or labour shortages and business closures. But you can't do it every day and undiluted, because it's bad for us both, actually. It's bad for both of us. And I like stories that allow us to go off in completely different directions. In fact, I like them more than ever at the moment. For example, yesterday's conversation about lonely men, I thought was really, really fascinating, really interesting. I could have carried it on and no doubt will return to it. But a bit of a different one for you now, because there is a sense, I talked about it yesterday, didn't I, with Socrates and Thucydides. I often cite Socrates and Thucydides when I'm talking about popular culture. There is a sense that the young people are different from what we are. You always have this. When I started doing this job, you may find this hard to believe, I still felt young in the sense of when we were talking about video games or films or cultural change, I was part of the zeitgeist that was creating the culture and creating the cultural change. Do you see what I mean? Especially with video games. One of my finest Fleet Street achievements was to smuggle a 5-star review for Grand Theft Auto 3 into the Daily Mail. Just 2 or 3 days before. I don't think anyone read the video game reviews when I used to write the video game reviews for that. I mean, anyone in charge, anyone in power. I mean, literally less than a week later, they were running a full-page editorial about how it was the end of civilization as we know it, and I'd managed just to snick in a little 5-star review for one of the best video games ever made. So do you see what I mean? The idea of it being the younger generation. Well, I'm not anymore. And I'm very conscious of that. I read stories about things like this, and I'm not at the top end of the age range, but I'm certainly not at the bottom. So it's about television. Young people now watch almost 7 times less broadcast television than people aged over 65. And I think the key phrase is broadcast television, because technically TikTok is telly. Technically, it's a screen with moving images on it. We take that as what we mean by television. Broadcast television will mean programs that have been made for television, if you like. So that would include Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the rest of the streaming platforms. Linear television, I'm quite good at this. Linear television is, and you know, I first heard that phrase, have I told you this? When the BBC's media editor, Amol Rajan, used the phrase at a book festival. I was having a chat with him backstage at a book festival. I had no idea what he was talking about, and I thought, I can't tell him I don't know what he's talking about. There's quite a large number of TV people in the group, and he just drops it into the middle of the conversation casually. Everyone else knows what it means. They're all stroking their beards and nodding their heads. And I thought, what could it be? I thought I'd worked it out by the end of the conversation. It's fair to say I didn't make many meaningful contributions to the conversation, but I know what linear television is now. Linear television is what we think of as the telly. For people of my generation, it's scheduled programming. So the 10 o'clock news at 10 o'clock on BBC One. EastEnders, 7:30, BBC. So that's linear television. Television where you pay for the paper, you get the schedule out, and you can only watch it once it's been on. In many ways, that's kind of withering on the vine, isn't it? So broadcast television is a more useful thing, because you BBC now, you go to the iPlayer and you can watch pretty much whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as it's already been broadcast. I don't know how many of us actually watch it, apart from the news and the soaps, actually watch it at the moment of broadcast. So that's So that's just changed. 1 in 5 UK homes has access to all 3 of the biggest streaming services. I think we can be fairly confident that that's going to be coming down as the cost of living crisis bites. But right now, 1 in 5, 20% of homes have Netflix, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. That's about £300 a year, although there are an awful lot of deals, freebies and introductory offers in place. There you go. Yeah, the number of households subscribing to at least one streaming service has actually come down by 350,000. So the pressure on household budgets already beginning to bite there. And I wasn't sure this was a topic until I thought of my late dad and those magical moments as a family when you as a child first felt the stirrings of your adult sense of humour, for example, when you first got jokes that made your dad laugh or made your mum laugh. I think for most people my generation, you'd be thinking Morecambe and Wise, probably. Not that it was particularly adult or mature humour, especially Eric's sort of slapstick, but laughing. Do you remember hearing your dad laugh when you were up in bed? When you were in bed and supposed to be nodding off, and there'd be a programme that just made your dad roar. Dave Allen for my old man. He'd listen to Dave Allen until the tears were pouring down his face. And Only Fools and Horses, surely, for many generations, not just mine, a programme that we would all watch. My sister is 2 years younger than me, but all 4 of us would watch Only Fools and Horses, and the Christmas special was an event. It was as much a part of Christmas as the cake, the Only Fools and Horses Christmas special. And that's when I wondered whether actually this isn't just another example of old people thinking that young people are profoundly different and that meaningful change is underway. That this might actually be one of those stop clock stories where something quite significant is happening in the world of culture and in the world of entertainment. Because with a couple of exceptions, and I listen, not to put too fine a point on it, or indeed not to prove Liz Truss's point, I had square eyes growing up. I could watch telly even when there were only 3 channels. I remember when Channel 4 launched. That was really exciting. Even when there were only 3 channels, I could watch telly. The only person I think I've ever spoken to who made me feel like I hadn't watched enough telly as a child was Richard Osman, who just was permanently, and look what it's done for him career-wise. I love the idea of someone saying, no, you're never going to get anywhere watching so much telly, Osman. And now he's one of the most brilliant TV geniuses in the history of the medium. But I watched a lot of telly, so I like telly. I like telly probably more even now than anyone else in my family. And perhaps that's the reason why we have happened upon a few things that we do all watch together. And I'm never happier than when all 4 of us are sat in the sitting room watching the same thing on telly, like loving something that we all watch together. Death in Paradise is a huge one in our house. All 4 of us absolutely love Death in Paradise. It helps that Ralph is a pal of mine, so occasionally he'll record a little message for the girls and they'll get really excited about it, and we'll all sit down and watch it, and then they'll go back and watch the old ones. Midsummer Murders, again. With the brilliant Neil Dudgeon now taking over from John Nettles. We'll watch Midsummer Murders as a family, as all 4 of us. But when I was growing up, that was every night. Every night we'd all be sitting in front of the same telly watching the same programmes. Every night, and there'd be little rows about it. As I got a little older, maybe I'd nip upstairs and play on my Spectrum because I didn't want to watch the news again. My father was a journalist, so the news, we'd watch the 6, the 9 and the 10 growing up, which was not ideal. Sports, whatever it was, sitting around, all 4 of us watching the same programmes on television. And the question is, does it matter that we're not going to be doing that anymore? I'll tell you what we loved. What's the Alice Osman thing that's just been huge? What's it called? The Alice Osman thing. Oh, come on. What's my Heartstopper. That's very modern. That's very much their zeitgeist. But Mrs. O'Brien and I absolutely loved that. But these numbers must mean that families don't watch TV anymore. And I think that's sad. What I don't know is whether or not it's significant. And that's the question I've got for you. Do you think this is actually quite a serious moment in family life, in family history? 0345 6060 9 973. Does it actually, now that I've painted this rather poignant picture of little me being kept away by my dear old dad's guffawing when Morecambe and Wise or Dave Allen were on the telly and the family all sitting around watching the Trotters, I think there's something really sad going on here. I think it's a real shame, and I don't think it's temporary, and I don't think it's reversible. I think that the days... Just think of the royal family. God, Ralph Little's getting a lot of mentions on the show today, isn't he? Just think of the royal family. That may not have been a crystal clear reflection of your own domestic setup, but I bet, whatever your class, I bet there was some echoes there of your own family, weren't there? That's gone forever. Oh, I just had a little shiver then. I think this is really sad. I kind of want you to persuade me that it isn't. And if you'd like to try, the number you need is 0345 6060 973. If you want to tell me to give my head a wobble and get with the programme, you are particularly encouraged to do so today. Or, of course, if you want to join me in actually mourning the passing of the days when families would watch television together. And you know how this programme works. We're always far too clever for our own good. So I want to know why it matters. Why does it matter? What are we going to lose now that we no longer watch television together? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. And tempting though it would be to say, oh no, it hasn't changed at all we do now is watch streaming together. 16 to 24-year-olds spend 53 minutes watching TV each day. That's gone down by 2/3 in 10 years. Over 65s spend just under 6 hours on average watching TV daily. So I'm afraid it is just change. And I think it's sad change, and I think we'll lose something. But I want your help in either backing away from that conclusion or identifying exactly what it is that we're going to lose. 0345 6060 973. Oh, and do you know what I missed as well? The whole thing about the whole country watching something together. So the most popular programme in the first 6 months of this year was the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Death in Paradise makes the top 10, as indeed does I always call it The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Canoe. It's the thing Eddie Marsan did about John Darwin, about the canoe, the fella who ran away and pretended he died. It's like a roll call of full disclosure guests, the top 10 of television in this country in the first 6 months. But the stuff that the whole country watched, that doesn't really happen anymore either, does it? I just think we're going to lose something, and I'm equally conscious of just being the old git complaining about modernity. Pip's in Epsom. Pip, what would you like to say?
Never let you be called yourself an old git, James. Long time no speak. Well, I mean, aside from the whole TV thing, yes. More importantly for you and I and the world is that radio. My kids are 26 and 22. Neither of them listen to the radio.
Oh, no.
They have, no, literally, and I've grown up with it the whole of my life, and they have with the whole of their life. And in fact, I was away last week for a couple of days, and I came back, and my son and his girlfriend live at home, and they said, oh, we realised what was odd when you weren't in. You came in and turned the radio on.
What's wrong with them?
Well, there's nothing wrong with them per se. But
I'm terribly sorry, Pip, but if they're not listening to this programme every day, they're in need of an intervention.
Well, indeed. Well, there is that, but it's just the fact they don't listen at all. So I mean, I can have the radio on, whatever it's you or
yes.
Radio 2 or radio, and I'm shouting, oh, for goodness sake, and yes. I'm, cursing at the news, oh, for goodness sake, and they have no opinion. They don't know what's going on. I mean, I think when that little lad, Archie Battersby, died a couple of weeks ago, I said, oh, isn't it sad? And they said, yes. What's that then? And I just looked at them as if like, oh, good God, you're functioning human beings. How can you not know what's going on?
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. So the news really is absent from their daily diet. And that, I guess, it's partly slightly worrying in the context of politics, isn't it? And what they will base their decisions on when they come to vote. Can I ask a silly question? Two silly questions. What do they do instead? And what do they talk about in the moments where you might be talking about something you'd seen on telly, heard on the radio, or that was in the news?
They're both my son and his girlfriend live with us, so they're both in their early 20s. Yeah. They are on the computer a lot doing games. They do Wordle. They do.
That's the New York Times. But it doesn't. They don't follow through to the. I don't
really think that counts.
No,
they do jigsaws. They do gardening. They play with the cats. They just don't interact with news.
And does that leave a hole?
makes me feel a bit isolated.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was just trying to pin down whether or not there is something here, or whether or not I am sounding like an old git. And I think you're kindly right. I don't think I am. I think there is something.
Well, if you're an old git, I'm the
a
female
gittess,
equivalent.
or whatever the female equivalent might be. And I think it's back to my own, not just my childhood, but when I was there at the age of Pip's children, in my early 20s, it'd be stuff that you watched all together. So do you want to try run through the top 10 things, most watched things in the... Because this is like the dog days, if you like, of broadcast television. So the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, that got 13.2 million viewers. The Tourist, we watched that. 3 of us watched that, actually. That was brilliant. That was the Jamie Dornan one where he woke up and couldn't remember anything at all. Absolutely superb piece of drama. That comes in at second. Trigger Point... Another thriller, I think. Passed me by that one. The Thief, His Wife and the Canoe. That was the 4th most popular programme in the first 6 months. And these are all things you can watch together. They're real cliffhangers. Eurovision Song Contest, a classic example of everyone sitting on the same sofa watching it. But what sort of hole has been left? Daniel's in Sunderland. Daniel, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. When you mentioned about your dad, that kind of struck a chord with me. My dad had died last year, and it all kind of just came back. These memories of sitting, waiting for basically the new episode of Doctor Who to start, and that would be the big event of everyone sitting together. You make a big thing out of it, make a big deal out of it. But now, 31, I've got 2 kids myself, and I'm trying to recapture that moment of this new movie's out, let's all sit down and watch it, and it'll not be long before after half an hour of watching Paw Patrol the movie, phones come out, and you've just completely.
I bet yours come out as well, though, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were just talking about the kids.
No. To say, but you just saw consistently bombarded with content, not just what you have right now, but what's coming out next, and that kind of excitement, that conversation of when the show's finished, it's like, oh, that was mint. What we're watching, what watching next, or what's going to happen next week? Now it's like the TV has just got YouTube rubbish content repeated.
We're both sounding like old gits, and I think you're younger than me. So, I mean, don't forget that Gogglebox is a relatively recent phenomenon, and that, in a way, is the sort of documentary version of the royal family, isn't it? I mean, it is literally just pointing a camera at families watching the telly together. So it's still got some currency in modern family life. We're now watching. We're watching other families watch television rather than watching television with our own families.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Crazy. 11:24. Thank you, Daniel. I like this. This is from Kate Robbins, who is actually on the telly, so she's a little bit more qualified, perhaps, than the rest of us. You'd have seen her in Afterlife and Unforgotten and various other entertainments. She says, a minor head wobble needed, James. Families eating out together more, recording TikToks together, holidaying together. The lexicon of families is more open and shared, intergenerationally sharing. So watching a network TV show together as a family isn't really missed. You know what? She's got a point, actually. So it is not there anymore, but there is more intergenerational mixing. You're more likely to be listening to the same music as your parents or as your children, or to be aware of it. We go to concerts as a family. I never went to a pop concert with either of my parents in my life. I went to see Miles Davis at the NEC with my old man once, which was an absolutely magical experience. But going to see Taylor Swift or Christina, I'm going to get my names wrong now, aren't I? Olivia Rodrigo. Who else have we been to see lately? We've seen some amazing gigs. So that's nice. But yeah, maybe there is a little bit more of intergenerational entertainment in different fields. Sam's in Manchester. Sam, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. Thanks for letting me on.
When people say that, I always get worried. It always sounds like you're about to do something awful. I don't let you on, Sam. You're welcome. You're always welcome here.
Thank you. Well, in contrast to the other gentleman, I didn't get his name, 31-year-old who has children. I'm 31 and I don't have children. Unfortunately, me and my partner can't. But that doesn't mute from the fact that I spend a lot of time with my younger siblings and lots of extended family. And this whole TV thing, my point was actually made by the text that was just sent in, that the TV will not be missed now. As a medium to sort of ingest and sit down together in a room and watch it late at night. And Christmas, I always remember Christmas like that as well, but it's changed now. Not just because...
But does it matter?
Media.
Kate Robbins pointing out that we might do other things together across the generations. Just because we're not sitting staring at the box together doesn't mean that we're not having shared experiences.
Yeah, indeed. We play board games. I invest heavily in games now. Growing up through the 90s, and you've seen that surge of consoles and stuff. The thing that's coming back now is a lot of board games.
Really?
One-to-one. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I spent so much money on different types of board games, from old generation type board games to even newer concepts now. And my sister, she's 14, and she loves to come up to see me and my partner, and brings the parents with them. We all sit down, we all play board games now. And when we're talking about getting media from radio and from other places, we all bring different stories in together. Have you seen this? Oh, no, tell me about it. And then that's a bit more of indulging through media from different people in your family, and it brings you together. It starts conversation. Whereas when we used to sit in front of the TV, we were all silent. We never spoke before. I never really knew my dad growing up. He was a postman.
Right.
So we used to sit down and watch TV, and it was like really, we used to love programs. We used to like Scrap Heap Challenge and all that sort of stuff. We never used to speak about it too much.
Because you'd be too busy watching it. But you do right. There's comfort there, though, just sitting together, isn't there? Is that not? They're warm memories, aren't they, or not? Or am I being a bit dewy-eyed?
Well, yeah, some of them are, some of them aren't. If we want to be teary-eyed about it, I love taking the good memories. But my father wasn't really a nice person, and I never really saw that. So I'm not going to get into that by the by. But
you're sharing a lot of information in the course of a conversation about the telly.
Yeah, but this is the thing. We wouldn't be sharing that sort of information about getting to know each other if we were watching the telly.
I guess
it would be. The telly is the main focus point of the family. It's my best friend has 2 children.
Yeah,
and they have the TV, but they don't pay for the BBC. They don't watch the BBC or anything like that.
Right.
They know that their kids who are coming into 10 years old now are more connected to their parents than I ever was to mine.
Well, that absolutely fascinates me, and it delights me a bit. And I know one swallow does not a summer make, and the plural of anecdote is not data, but that's a few people now suggesting that things aren't getting worse. They are changing, but they may actually be getting better.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. It is getting better. For me as well, I took my dad to a festival for the first time.
Gosh. I've got to read out some texts here for you.
Yeah,
Paul has written, board games, it's wide open, mate. Go on, kick it in. I don't know what he means. Dan in Chester has plug the games, James. Plug the game, you know you want to. I don't know what he's talking about either.
I think he's talking about the review and obviously the board game.
Here's another one from Darren. James, does he own the world's #1 board game? Darren, the truck driver on the M6. I don't know. What are these people talking about? Any ideas, Sam?
The world's #1 board game. Well, the most highly rated #1 board game is actually Pandemic.
Whoosh straight over his head. No, it's not that. I don't know why. What board game are they telling me to plug, do you think?
Oh, I think it might be the one about a certain Thursday afternoon show.
There we go. Have you got that yet?
I think it might be that one. I haven't. No, it's not part of my catalogue. I know.
Right, that's it. Cut him off. Seriously, that's enough from Sam. Thank you. Have a great day. I don't want him, but you're banned. He's absolutely banned from the programme. Of course, if you want to get yourself a copy of the Mystery Hour board game, mysteryhour.co.uk is the best place to go. I love that. I love that from Sam. That idea that, because I am being an old git and I'm going to have to guard against it. No one wants to listen to an old git on the radio every day. I'll be banging on about bicycle licences next. The idea that even though things are changing, it's not necessarily a change for the worse. It might be a change for the better. More on this, 0345 6060973, but also the whole nation watching something together. That probably is now gone, with a few precious exceptions. Dominic Ellis is here now with your headlines. 11:32 is the time. This is, as with all, quite often when we step a little bit back from the heavy end, from the deep end of the news, we're rather surprised by how delightful this conversation is. Here's another one that gives me hope rather than a growing sense of old gittery. That's a good word. I think you're wrong on the intergenerational thing, James. I instilled a deep love of popular culture in my kids growing up, and now, in their 20s, they constantly recommend new shows to me and talk about things they've watched. And because it's all available online, I can catch up with them. It stimulates more conversation and family closeness because we don't watch together, and it stimulates their analytical thinking because they want to tell me what previous shows this new show is like and which shows it's different from, why it works and why I'll like it. That's a lovely message. Would it be patronising of me to compliment you upon your punctuation? That is. I know that these things don't matter so much. Oh, I've gone old gittery again. I just stepped back from old gittery for a couple of minutes and now I've dived back in again. But I care about punctuation. Sue me if you don't like it. That is a beautifully punctuated text message, and you don't even need to punctuate text messages. 11:33 is the time. Marcus texted, say, James, my son bought me your excellent board game last Christmas. The only thing is I can't convince him or my wife to play it with me. Do you think it will be worth money in years to come? An unopened first edition. Honestly, Mark, no. I don't. Take it down the pub or something. That'd be great. That'd be a wonderful way to make new friends. Mandeep's in Uxbridge. Mandeep, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. A pleasure to speak to you.
We'll see.
It's always a pleasure to listen to you. It may not be to speak to you.
Thank you. I mustn't add that to my long list of repetitive catchphrases that no one except me enjoys. So we'll scratch that one immediately. What made you pick up the phone, Mandy?
Well, I picked up the phone based on what you mentioned earlier, that we are watching less TV or less broadcast television. And I think, in my personal example, what I found is, it's only my mum and I that, especially over the pandemic, we bonded more because we weren't spending time just watching TV and only partially engaging. We are watching more TV together, even though we are watching less TV overall. And I think a part of the advent of that, or what certainly helped, is multi-language programs that are being made by your OTT content providers, like your Netflixes and your Amazons and stuff, that are making global programs, so we can watch stuff together. Not that my mum's been here since the 70s. She understands and speaks perfect English. It's just the cultural relations.
I get that. Of course, I get that. I mean, blimey, it's just the window I've never looked through, isn't it? So you're watching just different stuff together. Although you sound older. You're not 16 to 24, are you?
No, I'm like 40 myself.
Yeah, so there's another difference there. 16 to 24-year-olds are just not watching it anymore compared to older people and compared to what they used to do. There'll be outliers. There'll be like weird ones like Love Island and things like that, which just post enormous figures and are going to be incredibly popular among 16 to 24-year-olds.
I think that 16 to 24-year-olds are still watching content that's made by traditional broadcasters anyway. You can get stuff on iPlayer, you get the 4 on-demand stuff as well. So I don't think the broadcasters have lost place in the whole sphere of television.
I call this wrong.
It's not a thing anymore.
I think because it made me miss my dad, I think that I allowed that sadness to actually start defining my approach to the whole story. I felt for me, reading this and missing my dad and thinking about what we would watch together, actually almost sort of injected sadness into my reading of the whole story. But it's not actually a sad story. At 11:36, there's always time for the pendulum to swing back. But it's not a sad story necessarily, is it?
Well, I think you can maybe look at the other side of it. It was like, what kind of stuff would you have watched with your dad now if there was the way that content is available? And would you have spent more time together watching things and dissecting things together, as I imagine you guys probably would have?
And you'd have watched it at opposite ends of the country. You'd have watched it at opposite ends of the country at different times as well. So, yeah, I get this is not necessarily a sad development or a negative. And I don't know, is there, I mean, that royal family image of everyone sitting on the same sofa looking at the telly, I've done it as well, haven't I? I should have stuck with Socrates and Thucydides. The world turns, things change, but the eternals, the universal eternals, stay the same. Family time together survives. They're just not spending as much time together sitting on a sofa staring at a screen anymore. Ben's in Woking. Ben, what would you like to say?
James, good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm quite surprisingly uplifted by this conversation, as opposed to having my old gittery confirmed, which is what I was expecting.
I was originally going to call and say that I did fear that you were becoming something of a Greek philosopher.
Thank you.
But as I've been on hold listening to the chat,
yes,
you've moved on, and I'm delighted about that. And I want to cheer you up a little bit further, if I may.
Go on.
I lost my father when I was quite young. I was nearly 11, And I have those.
You haven't cheered me up so far. You haven't cheered me up so far, Ben. I'm very sorry to hear that.
I have those strong memories of watching, event television, event movies and things, the Christmas movie with my dad from when I was younger. And not only does streaming allow me to have the same experiences with my young children now, but I can also share with them the stuff I watched with my dad. So I showed my 6-year-old daughter Goonies, and other 80s adventures are available. But I showed my 6-year-old daughter Goonies, which I remember watching at a similar age with my dad 30-odd years ago.
Yeah.
And it was such an incredible experience, kind of getting to pass on that emotion to the next generation down. And that wouldn't necessarily have been possible without the streaming services.
And actually, it makes a bit of a nonsense of the phrase broadcast television, doesn't it? Because that could have been on at 6 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. You just didn't watch it via that avenue. You watched it via a streaming service, which means it doesn't count as broadcast television. It counts as a streaming service.
Of course, but the experiences, and that's what I was going to say originally, kind of when books first being published and they were across the board and people were starting to buy them, parents were worried that their kids were reading books instead of walking. And then when radio came along, people were worried that the kids were listening to the radio instead of reading books. And then the same with TV and the same with movies and the same with comic books and the same with video games.
Yeah.
We're just in that next stage of evolution. I don't think we have lost anything. I think we're simply at that next stage of entertainment consumption evolution.
And the older you are, the old is that a dog in the background?
Yeah, someone rang the doorbell and she's being very, very naughty, but she's shushed now.
Go and deal with either the doorbell or the dog. I love that, Ben. Thank you. You're right. I mean, I have to guard against this. And in fact, the topic I've got lined up for the next hour might be another example of it. I can't turn into someone who complains about change or even feels sad about change. I'm definitely not that person. I sometimes wonder whether I go too far the opposite way. But the story in the next hour is something that I was going to suggest to you is a rare example of change and progress actually being ridiculous. In the way that the Daily Mail will claim that all change and progress is ridiculous, from, I don't know, women getting jobs and wearing trousers right through to whatever they're getting cross about today, cyclists, I think. There is a story in the news today, you're probably already aware of it, that I cannot get my head around. But given that I've called this one so wrong as a consequence of my encroaching age, I'm now beginning to wonder whether I've called the other one wrong. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. Phil's in Chester. Phil, what would you like to say?
Agree with most of what all your callers are saying, James.
Yeah, I've got this wrong. Why have I got this so wrong? It's quite bizarre. It's not like me, he says, very arrogantly.
I've got an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Right.
Both great kids, really good education, love reading, love doing all the things they should do. But given the chance, they'd sit for hours in front of YouTube and just watch rubbish, as I see it, which is, and my little boy will watch guys playing video games on YouTube. So it's watching other people doing things.
Watching other people play games. I had a look at how much money some of those streamers make the other day.
Staggering.
No, it's off the flipping charts, mate, isn't it?
I know.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And that's what they do. They play video and provide commentary as well.
Or open football cards.
Yeah.
Just sat there opening football cards, and they'll do it for hours and hours, and I just don't get it at all, and it drives me crazy, and I have to take them off. But the other really weird thing, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier on, me and my wife were looking through, and we constantly watching all kinds of different things, and we came across on Gold, Are You Being Served?
Right.
And Dad's Army, and a few other bits like that. And
you don't have to go on Gold for Dad's Army. It's on BBC Two every night. It often feels, has been for 40 years.
Well, Are You Being Served? And my 8-year-old and 11-year-old are laughing like crazy to it.
Do they love it?
Yeah.
That was one of the ones one of the first ones that made me feel I understood adult humour. I should have put that on the list as well. I loved that show.